What if everything that broke you was exactly what you needed to wake up? Don't answer too quickly. Pause. Breathe. Let that question settle inside you like a silent flame you didn't know was already burning. Because maybe that abandonment, that loss, that rejection that scarred your story weren't mistakes. Maybe they were the doorway back to yourself. You've lived through moments you couldn't explain. Relationships that left you empty, paths that seemed like promises, only to end in ruin. And yet, you're still here, asking yourself if any of it meant something. That question doesn't come from the mind, it comes from the soul. If this message has already started to stir something within you, stay with it until the end. What you're about to discover may change the way you see life. And if it resonates, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Your soul has already begun to awaken. Now you just need to follow it. Carl Jung understood this like few others. He didn't believe in coincidences. He said, "Even the most trivial events in our lives are full of meaning, and if you dare to look at your story through that lens, through symbol, through the unconscious, through the unspoken, something shifts. Not out there. Within. This isn't just another video. It wasn't made to distract you. It was made to gently unsettle you, to provoke you, to shake you from the numbness you've been living in. Because the pain you don't understand enslaves you, but the pain you understand sets you free. Ask yourself, with brutal honesty, why do you keep ending up in the same kind of relationship? Why do you sabotage yourself right when you're about to succeed? Why can't you trust even though you deeply want to love? Why do you feel empty even when everything seems fine? It's not coincidence, it's causality. Your unconscious has been speaking to you for years, through dreams, symptoms, patterns, relationships. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That thing you can't see, the thing you deny, the thing that makes you uncomfortable, is guiding you. You're not broken, you're fragmented. The good news is you can become whole, you can return to yourself. But first, you have to be willing to face what hurts, to confront the shadow, to stop running, to stop conforming. Because you weren't born to be perfect or to fulfill others' expectations. You were born to remember who you are. And that remembrance begins now. Yes, you're going to feel, because waking up hurts. Because your ego will resist, because you'll have to let parts of yourself die, parts that once protected you but no longer represent you. You'll have to look at your masks, the strong woman who never cries, the pleaser who always says yes, the responsible one who carries everything, even what was never hers to bear. And behind each mask lies your truth. You won't find magic. Formulas here. You'll find questions, perhaps ones you've never dared to ask. And if you stay until the end, I promise, something in you will light up. You'll remember that your story makes sense, even the parts you hate, even the ones you still can't forgive. This video is a map, a symbolic, emotional, invisible map. A journey to your center. So listen carefully, watch until the end, don't skip. Don't put it off. Subscribe now. Turn on the notifications, because everything you'll find here isn't entertainment. It's fire. It's mirror. It's a tool. And if you're here, it's because you're ready to see yourself as you never have before. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That is your task, not to collect achievements, not to play roles, not to please everyone. Your task is to find yourself. And to find yourself, you'll need to lose everything you are not. This isn't about healing fast. It's about healing for real. And to truly heal, you have to stop running, stop justifying, stop blaming, stop pretending it's all behind you, because more often than not, what hurts the most isn't the memory. It's the part of you that was never seen when it happened. Jung said the soul speaks in symbols. And when you don't listen, it starts to scream. It screams through Anxiety, insomnia, painful relationships. It screams through repeated patterns, self-sabotage, tightness in your throat. And no, it's not bad luck, it's a calling. Your unconscious isn't trying to destroy you, it's trying to complete you. And to do that, it keeps placing you face to face with yourself. Through what irritates you, frustrates you, overwhelms you. Ask yourself, why do I attract people who don't value me? Why do I repeat the same story again and again? Why do I carry responsibilities that aren't mine? Jung made it clear, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Not because you're to blame, but because you're not yet whole. And life, when the soul is ready, begins to return fragments of yourself through human mirrors. Look at it this way. Every relationship is a key. Some open wounds, others healing. But all of them, absolutely all, carry a message. And if you don't learn to read it, you'll repeat it until it hurts enough to wake you up. That is the purpose of the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It's not your enemy. It's your most honest teacher. It's the part of you you repress to fit in, to survive, to be the good one. It's your denied rage, your silenced sadness, your hidden desire, your muted voice, your unspoken need. And until you acknowledge it, it will show up as symptoms, conflicts, and relationships that feel like punishment, but they're not. They're opportunities. Opportunities to integrate, to return to yourself, to finally say, this is me too, because you are not only your light, you are also your shadow, and only by embracing both can you become real. The process isn't linear. You'll fall back, you'll doubt yourself 1,000 times, but each time you dare to look honestly at a part of yourself you once denied, you move closer to your center, closer to the woman who no longer performs, to be loved, but loves herself enough to stop performing. That's the beginning of freedom, not external freedom, internal, the kind you feel when you no longer need to prove yourself, or be liked or hide, just breathe, just be. And yes, some won't understand your process. Some will say, you've changed. And you'll have every right to say, yes, I've changed because I no longer want to be a broken version of myself just to make others comfortable. True healing begins with a decision. No more masks, no more roles, no more denial, just truth. Even if it hurts, even if it shakes everything you thought was solid. Because what collapses when you awaken was never truly yours. It was what you believed you had to be in order to be loved, but now you choose yourself. And when a woman chooses herself, the world trembles. You cannot heal what you are unwilling to see, and more often than not, the thing you fear to face the most is exactly what needs to be seen. Jung spoke of the inner child as a living figure inside every adult. A sensitive, spontaneous, vulnerable part of you, frozen somewhere in childhood. That child is still there. And if you don't listen, don't hold her, don't acknowledge her, she'll start to run your life. From the shadows, have you ever felt emotionally overwhelmed for no clear reason? Reacted like a 5-year-old when you know you're a grown woman? Looked for something in your partners that even you don't understand? That's not weakness. That's your inner child asking for attention. The unconscious doesn't forget what the mind tries to silence, and everything you couldn't process as a child, you repeat as an adult, not because you're foolish, not because you're broken, but because you haven't understood it yet. Jung said, depression is like a woman dressed in black. If she turns up, don't shoo her away, invite her in, offer her a seat, and listen to what she has to say. That woman in black is often the sadness of your childhood, the unspoken abandonment, the unexplained confusion, the loneliness disguised as independence, that ancient emotion that lost its voice now wants to speak. So here's my invitation, not to entertain you, to transform you. Close your eyes, Recall a moment from your childhood that still hurts, even faintly. It doesn't matter if it seems small, if it made you feel less than, invisible, confused. Write it down, in your own words, unfiltered, as if your inner child were telling it to you. Now ask yourself, what part of me was formed by that experience? What did I decide about myself in that moment? Maybe you decided you weren't enough. Maybe you learned to stay silent to avoid being a burden. Maybe you concluded that feeling was dangerous. And without knowing it, you began to build a life to avoid ever feeling that way again. But deep down, you still feel it. The soul doesn't forget, and neither does the body. Chronic pain, anxiety without clear cause, insomnia, emotional fatigue, all of it carries a symbol beneath it. These aren't just illnesses, they are messages, they are signals, they are parts of you saying, "Here I am. Will you finally see me?" And if you do, something shifts, not instantly, not magically, but truly, because everything you repress ends up ruling you, and everything you understand sets you free. Jung repeated it time and time again. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That fate you keep repeating, that why does this always happen to me? It's not bad luck. It's an unclaimed opportunity, a lesson left unlearned. Next time you feel a powerful emotional pain, don't run, pause, close your eyes, and ask that emotion, what are you trying to show me? Where do you come from? What part of me are you protecting? You might discover that your sadness just wants you to let your guard down, that your anger is asking you to set boundaries, that your fear simply wants to bring you home. Because behind every emotion you reject, there is a need that was never met, and when you finally see it, the wound begins to heal. You cannot truly heal if you keep projecting your shadow onto others. It's hard to hear, but necessary. Because as long as you're blaming others, your ex, your mother, fate, life itself, you're giving your power away. And what you don't take responsibility for rules you. What you don't integrate repeats. What you don't transform traps you. Carl Jung taught that the shadow isn't just hidden in repressed emotions. It lives in everything you criticize, hate or reject in others. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So pause and reflect. Does someone's coldness upset you? Maybe you never allowed yourself to create distance. Does someone's arrogance bother you? Maybe you've hidden your own need to speak boldly. Does someone's freedom make you uncomfortable? Maybe you haven't yet allowed yourself to live that way. This isn't about justifying anyone else. It's about seeing. Because every relationship, the good, the bad, the unbearable, is a mirror, a symbol, a message. And when you stop reacting and start observing, you discover something brutally honest. Every person who has passed through your life came to show you a part of yourself you didn't want to see. And this is not punishment, it's awakening. Even those who hurt you unknowingly touched something sacred. They activated an old wound, one that was already there, one you didn't even know you were carrying. And now you have two choices. Keep denying it, or look at it with love. That's spiritual maturity, that's deep psychology, that's emotional courage. Jung spoke of the hero archetype not as a perfect figure, but as an inner force that awakens when the soul is ready to stop running. And yes, there's a heroine inside you too. A woman who, though wounded, rises. One who gets tired, but doesn't give up. One who chooses to look at her ruins and build a temple from them. The hero's journey doesn't begin with strength. It begins with crisis, with emptiness, with disorientation, with an "I can't do this anymore" that turns into "now I'm truly beginning." And that moment, that turning point, could be now. Because every time you choose to see with awareness, something awakens within you, a dormant part. begins to move. The adapted woman starts to fall away, and the real woman, whole, imperfect, radiant, and shadowed, begins to be born. But the ego resists. The ego wants control, certainty, labels. It wants to be the good one, the strong one, the one who never complains, the one who always has it together. But the soul doesn't want that. The soul wants truth. It wants depth. It wants coherence. That's why discomfort arises. That's why you feel like your life no longer fits. Why relationships break. Why work feels meaningless. Why everything seems to be falling apart. It's not destruction. It's a reset. If anything you've heard so far has stirred something inside you that was asleep, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to Walk This Path with us and share this video with someone who also needs to remember who they are. Sometimes a single word can spark transformation. Jung said, chaos is necessary for a new order to emerge. So if you're in the middle of chaos, you're not failing. You're in transition. This is the exact point where many give up because it hurts, because it's confusing, because it's terrifying. But you're not here by accident. You're here because something inside you, something deep, real, yours, no longer wants to stay asleep. And that something, though trembling, is ready to move forward. Let me offer you a simple but powerful exercise. Think about the situation that marked you the most in the past year, the one you still don't quite understand. Now ask yourself, what did it force me to see? What part of me did it awaken? What strength did it reveal? And if you don't have clear answers, that's okay. The point isn't certainty, it's presence. Because the moment you begin to truly look, without judgment, without rushing, consciousness expands. And once it expands, there's no going back. You cannot become who you truly are if you keep clinging to who you no longer are. That is the heart of what Carl Jung called individuation, an inner journey, not toward others, not toward success, toward you, toward the forgotten center. Toward that inner place from which everything that matters is born. But no one reaches it without first getting lost. No one wakes up without first falling asleep in the lie of who they thought they were. We live in a culture obsessed with doing, achieving, proving. And there you are, repeating routines, holding on to relationships, disguising your silence. And inside, a voice that won't be silenced. The voice that asks, is this all? Is this who I am? Is this what I came here to do? That voice is yourself calling you back. Jung put it bluntly. The ego is a small island in the midst of a vast ocean it does not understand. That ocean is your soul, your inner world, your emotional truth, your symbol, your sacred chaos. And if you don't dare to dive in, you'll live on autopilot, repeating days, repeating stories, repeating roles. Because yes, we often live as characters. And deep down, you know it. You've been the perfect daughter, the good woman, the steady partner, the devoted mother, the efficient professional. But when were you you? When was the last time you did something just because it brought you joy, without obligation, without having to explain, without fear of disappointing anyone? The soul withers when we live only to meet expectations. It blooms when we begin to choose ourselves. But to choose yourself, you must first hear yourself, and to hear yourself, you must be quiet, truly quiet. Not just shutting out external noise, but silencing the internal noise too. The judgment, the pressure, the fear, the voice that compares, the one that whispers you're still not enough. Jung said the soul's wisdom doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you don't make space, if you don't pause, if you don't stay with yourself, you won't hear it. You'll keep chasing goals that aren't yours, relationships that pull you away from yourself, standards that empty you, and one day you'll realize that everything you built doesn't hold you. That's why the crisis comes. That's why the anxiety, the discomfort, the feeling that everything is slipping through your fingers. because the soul can no longer stand exile, because what's true begins to hurt when it's not being lived. And no, you're not lost. You're standing at the threshold. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege comes with a price. You have to let go of the mask. You have to allow old versions of yourself, those that have run their course, to die. You have to make peace with your shadow. And above all, you have to stop searching outward for what can only be found within. The world won't give you permission. You have to give it to yourself. Pause now, close your eyes, and ask yourself, with brutal honesty, what part of me no longer wants to keep performing? What area of my life no longer represents me? Where am I betraying myself in the name of stability? If the answer hurts, don't run. You're close. You're brushing up against the truth. And truth, yes, it unsettles, but it also liberates. Because when you dare to see what you once avoided, life stops being a labyrinth and becomes a path. The soul doesn't shout, it whispers, and it speaks through symbols. Carl Jung understood this well. The unconscious doesn't speak in words. It communicates through images, through sensations, through dreams, through events that seem random but aren't. He called it synchronicity, and you've experienced it more times than you realize. That person who showed up just when you needed them. That phrase you overheard by accident, but struck you like a message. That book that fell into your hands without looking for it and revealed something your soul already knew. They're not coincidences, they're responses, they're signs. Your unconscious doesn't sleep, it watches, it feels, it speaks. And when your ego refuses to listen, it finds another way. Through the body, through illness, through insomnia, through that nameless ache in your chest, through that sadness that has no reason but won't leave. Jung said, symptoms are the soul's attempt to make itself heard, and when you ignore them, they intensify, because the soul doesn't give up. It doesn't want you comfortable, it wants you awake. Have you ever had dreams that shook you, though you didn't know why? Strange scenes, people from your past, repeating symbols. The unconscious doesn't pick these elements randomly. Every image carries emotional weight. Every symbol is a key. Every dream is an intimate conversation with your truth. But we weren't raised to listen. We were raised to silence, to rationalize, to explain everything through logic, and that's where the problem lies. The soul doesn't speak through logic. It speaks through symbols, through the unsaid, through what language can't name. Do you want to begin transforming your life? Then start listening to what you've ignored. Start recording your dreams. Write them down upon waking, without judgment, without trying to make sense right away. Let them speak, and ask yourself, what part of me is expressing itself here? What emotion is surfacing? What am I avoiding? Sometimes dreaming of water points to unexpressed emotion. Dreaming of doors may symbolize a possibility you're afraid to open. Dreaming of an ex isn't about missing them. It's about missing the version of you that existed in that connection. Dreaming of death isn't fear of the end. It's a longing to be reborn. But don't look for generic interpretations. Dreams don't come from outside, they come from you, and you are unique. That's why Jung emphasized there are no universal recipes, there are personal symbols. And when you learn to read your own language, you become your best guide. But that takes courage, because sometimes what the soul wants to show you makes you uncomfortable, because it shatters your story. It challenges your identity. It forces you to see that maybe you aren't who you thought you were. And that's where real freedom begins, when you stop searching for answers outside and sit with yourself in silence to listen. The body speaks too, and when you don't hear the soul, the body shouts. Chronic tension, constant fatigue, unexplained pain. It all has an emotional root, not to blame yourself, but to free yourself. Try this. Think of a part of your body that's been bothering you recently. Now close your eyes and ask it, what are you holding? What are you containing? What haven't I allowed myself to feel? It may seem simple, but it's not. It's an act of reconnection, of inner humility, of opening to the invisible, because the invisible is the most real. There's a wound that nearly all women carry, a silent, deep, inherited wound. It doesn't always come from obvious trauma. Sometimes it comes from habit, from a rule, from a learned way of being that was never questioned. The wound of pleasing, of adapting, of smiling through pain, of staying silent not to upset anyone, of giving in out of fear of rejection, of sacrificing your desire in the name of love. And that love, deep down, wasn't even real. It was an illusion you built to avoid abandonment. Do you see yourself in this? Carl Jung spoke of the anima, the feminine principle within the soul. It doesn't matter if you're a woman. The anima represents intuition, sensitivity, connection with deep soul. But when that part is repressed, when you're taught to distrust yourself, when your emotion is labeled exaggerated, weak, irrational, the anima becomes distorted and begins to show up as dependency, as a constant need for approval, as total disconnection from your intuition. So you begin to live outwardly, through the persona, through the mask, through I should, and the more perfect you appear, the emptier you feel. Do you know why? Because your soul doesn't want perfection. It wants authenticity. It wants you to speak your truth, to feel without asking permission, to set boundaries, to say no, to say enough, to listen to yourself above the noise. But to do that, something has to break. The idea of who you thought you were supposed to be. And that hurts, because that pleasing version once saved you. It protected you as a child. It helped you survive in a world that didn't see you. But now, it no longer serves you. Now it holds you captive. And that's why you feel anger. That anger you don't understand, that shows up at the worst moments, that makes you feel guilty. That anger is your soul saying no more silence, no more sacrifice, no more dressing up just to be loved. The awakened woman isn't the one who shouts. She's the one who chooses herself, the one who honors her intuition, the one who doesn't beg for affection, the one who refuses to apologize for feeling too much. And yes, it's scary, because you will lose relationships, you will make others uncomfortable, you will shatter the image they had of you, but you will come home to yourself, and that return has no price. Jung said, individuation is the process by which a person becomes who they are truly capable of being, and you are capable of far more than you believe. But first, you have to make space for the rage you silenced, for the sadness you hid, for the desire you denied, for the voice you buried. Try this. Write down a truth you've never dared to say, a sentence you carry inside that you've been postponing. Maybe it's a boundary you didn't set. Maybe it's a decision you never made. Maybe it's a part of you you abandoned out of fear of being judged. Write it down, read it aloud, hear yourself, and if you feel afraid, that's okay. You're beginning to make space for what's real. You're awakening the wild feminine, free, intuitive, untamed. Not to become a perfect woman, but to return to yourself. Before you can be reborn, you have to die. Not in the body, in the identity, in everything you built, believing that was you. Carl Jung knew this. Chaos precedes transformation. And that chaos is not punishment, it's birth. Painful, yes, confusing, unstable, but also profoundly necessary. There's a moment on the path of awakening when everything falls apart. Your certainties fail, your relationships tremble, your self-image shatters, your old desires fade, and all that remains is you, without masks, without defenses, without performance. That's the moment many give up, Because it's not easy to be lost, not easy to look in the mirror and not recognize yourself, not easy to cry without knowing why, to tremble without reason, to feel that everything solid is gone. But this is not the end. It's the threshold. You're in transition, in that liminal space where you're no longer the old you, but not yet the new. And that's uncomfortable, but it's also sacred, because that emptiness you fear so much is fertile. It's the exact place where your authenticity begins to grow. Jung spoke of the dark night of the soul, a period when the psyche descends into shadow to purify, to burn away what's false, to release what no longer resonates. And you can't avoid it. You can't skip it. You can't numb it without paying a price, because if you run from the void, you fill yourself with what you don't need. And if you don't grieve yourself, you're condemned to repeat what you already know. You are being called to let go, to surrender, to accept that part of you is dying, so that another part, more honest, more alive, more you, can be born. But that death hurts. It's a silent farewell to the woman you used to be, to the choices you made out of fear, to the dreams you built from the need to be loved. It's time to honor your own symbolic funeral, to say goodbye to the you who always pleased, the you who stayed silent not to upset anyone, the you who settled for less. And yes, you'll cry, you'll feel lonely, you'll miss even your own illusions. But the new cannot enter if you don't clear the space. Try this. Write a letter to the woman you used to be, not to judge her, to thank her. She did the best she could with what she had. She held you, protected you, kept you alive, but she's no longer needed. Tell her thank you, and tell her goodbye, because you're ready for something else. You may not know what it is yet, but your soul knows, and that's enough. Jung said, "The soul has an innate tendency toward wholeness, and even if you can't see the full map, you've already taken the first step. You're not getting lost. You're coming back, even if it hurts, even if it doesn't fully make sense yet. Just keep going, feel, let go. You are in the womb of change, and in that place, silence is also a seed. Awakening isn't an explosion, it's a whisper. It doesn't arrive with fireworks, it arrives in silence on an ordinary afternoon, in a subtle gesture, in a deep breath, when finally you're no longer running from yourself. After the chaos comes the echo, and in that echo, something new appears, not a better version of who you were, something else, simpler, truer, more you. You don't need to prove anything, you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to convince anyone, because for the first time, you feel at home within yourself. Carl Jung called that moment the encounter with the self, the essential core of being. Not the ego, not the image, not the persona, but the wise, silent, steady part of you that was always there, but you couldn't hear it over the noise of everything pulling you away from yourself. And when you return to that center, something realigns, not on the outside, on the inside. You no longer need to force. You no longer need to run. You no longer need validation, because you know, and that's enough. You know who you are, not. And that is freedom. There's nothing more powerful than a woman who no longer wants to pretend, who doesn't need to fit in, who doesn't apologize for feeling, who doesn't negotiate her truth. And that woman isn't born from perfection. She's born from the wound, from the chaos, from the void, from having lost everything except herself. And now you realize true strength isn't about resisting. It's about surrendering to what can no longer be carried. It's about letting fall what weighs you down. It's about seeing your reflection without filters and recognizing yourself as whole, even with your cracks. Because your cracks don't diminish your worth, they reveal it. Where you were once broken, you now shine with a different light. Not the polished light of achievement, but the soft light of someone who knows herself, who listens to herself, who honors herself. Jung said many people spend their lives trying to become what others expect of them, not knowing that this is the cruelest form of inner betrayal. But you're no longer there. You've crossed a threshold, and even if fear still lingers, something in you has awakened. Do this. Place one hand on your heart and one on your belly. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and repeat to yourself, not from your mind, but from your body, I am here, I am me, I am with myself. That phrase may seem simple, but if you truly feel it, it reconfigures you, because you don't need more. What you were searching for out there was always inside. And now you know, this isn't about going back to who you were. It's about building from truth, the woman you're now willing to become. And that woman isn't born from pressure, she's born from integration. Because now you know you're not just your light, you're also your shadow. And the more you know yourself, the more you realize they can coexist without conflict. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And you've already done that. You've faced what hurt. You've walked through the fire. Now it's time to live with awareness. But what does that mean? It means you won't act out of habit. You won't love from lack. You won't decide from fear. It means that every step you take will be yours, chosen, felt, honest. Because now you know how to tell the difference between what fulfills you and what only distracts you. Between what resonates and what merely takes up space. And that changes everything. The awakened woman doesn't need a perfect life. She needs a real one, with pauses, with silence, with relationships that don't hurt, with routines that don't deplete her, with choices that reflect who she is, with environments that don't make her forget herself. It's not about achieving more. It's about feeling more, being present, looking at the sky without thinking of your to-do list, speaking and listening to your own words, making love and being there, eating and giving thanks, crying without apologies, laughing without fear of being too much. That's living. Everything else is surviving. And you've survived enough. Now, it's time to inhabit yourself, but be careful. The ego will want to return. The old you will try to regain control. It'll tell you you're overreacting, that you're giving yourself too much permission, that it's better not to feel so much, that it's better not to reveal so much. But now you recognize that voice. It's no longer your guide. It's a ghost, and you can let it go. Try this. Write a list of the things you are no longer willing to tolerate, not as a promise, as a declaration, a way to mark the beginning of your new life, your life with soul. And next to that, write another list. The things you do want, the things you do deserve, the things you will allow, not because someone gave them to you, but because now you choose yourself. Remember, your story is not defined by what you lived, but by what you choose to do with it, and you've already chosen to awaken. Now the only thing left is to sustain yourself, not as a burden, but as an act of love. The soul didn't ask you to be fast. It asked you to be true. And now, you walk with it. When a woman finds herself, everything changes, not just for her, for everyone around her. Her voice changes, her gaze, her way of walking, her presence in silence. She no longer chases. She no longer begs for love. She no longer apologizes for feeling deeply, and that unsettles others because the world isn't used to awakened women. It's used to available women, women who adapt, who smile, who wait. But you are no longer available for what takes you away from yourself. And because of that, some people will leave. People who were in your life for years may begin to feel uncomfortable with your change. They'll say you're different, that you're not who you used to be, and they'll be right because the woman you used to be kept dimming her light, and you now are lit from within. But be mindful. This change brings a particular kind of loneliness, not the loneliness of being without company, but the solitude of being with yourself, and realizing that for a long time you were surrounded, but absent. And that loneliness is sacred. It's where your new roots take hold, where the field is cleared, where space is made for the authentic. Don't rush to fill the void. Don't look for quick replacements. Stay with yourself. Breathe your own presence. Listen to your new rhythm and wait, because what's real doesn't come from anxiety. It comes from resonance. When a woman stands firm in her truth, she begins to attract differently, no longer from need, but from coherence. And coherence is magnetic. People who are also awake will begin to draw near, connections that don't hurt, conversations that nourish, presences that don't demand, just accompany. But for that to happen, you have to hold yourself. Resist the temptation to return to what's familiar. Don't shrink just to avoid loss. Don't betray yourself just to avoid solitude. Carl Jung said, the soul has an instinctive need to expand, and expansion always unsettles those who chose to remain small. You're not here to fit in. You're here to be a lighthouse. And yes, sometimes lighthouses stand alone, but they never stop shining. Try this. Write a letter to your future self, to the woman who already lives the life you're just beginning to build. Tell her who you were, where you fell, what you had to let go of, and say to her, I'm coming, wait for me, because you will arrive, not by accident, but because you're choosing every day, every decision, every step, and that is everything. When a woman heals, she doesn't heal just for herself. She heals for her mother, for her grandmother, for the women in her lineage who couldn't, who had no choice, who silenced themselves to survive, who lived invisible, who held on until they broke, who never asked who they were, because no one ever told them they could. But you can, and that's why you're here. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious as a deep field we all share, a web of symbols, stories, wounds, and wisdom passed through generations. And you are part of that web. Your pain isn't only yours, but your healing isn't either. When you choose to face yourself truthfully, you interrupt a pattern. You break the cycle of women who betrayed themselves to hold others. You say enough. You say, now it's my turn. You say, this time, I'm not putting myself last. And that is revolution. It doesn't matter if no one notices. It doesn't matter if the world looks the same on the outside. On the inside, you're writing a new destiny when you decide you won't be silent anymore. When you choose to inhabit your body without shame. When you say no without explanation. When you choose from the soul, not from duty. You open a path for others who are still afraid to choose. And that is your power. You don't need to be a leader, a guru, or a public figure. You just need to be you, whole, present, honest. Your coherence is medicine. Do you see that? The way you speak to yourself today is healing your mother's critical voice. The way you allow yourself to rest is undoing generations of exhaustion. The way you set boundaries is teaching your daughter or your inner child that her worth doesn't depend on how much she can endure. Jung knew it. What is not made conscious manifests as fate. And you are choosing consciousness. You are choosing to be the turning point, the before and after of an ancestral story. Try this. Close your eyes. Imagine the women of your lineage standing behind you. See their faces, their fears, their sacrifices, and silently tell them, thank you for getting us this far. Now it's my turn, and this time, I will do it differently. Maybe you'll cry. Maybe something inside you will tremble. That's the chain loosening. That's the inheritance being released. That's your soul expanding. Because when a woman remembers herself, many others can finally rest. Now you can look back, and it doesn't hurt the same. Not because you forgot, not because it doesn't matter, but because you understood, because everything you lived had meaning. even what you still can't fully explain. Carl Jung said, suffering loses its power when it finds meaning, and you have begun to find it. That doesn't mean justifying, it means understanding, and understanding is the foundation of emotional freedom. Look at your story, every wrong decision, every love that hurt, every silence you swallowed, every sacrifice no one saw, every broken night, every anxiety, every mistake. None of it was wasted, none of it was punishment, all of it was a map. Your soul didn't make a mistake, it was trying to return to you. And sometimes, the only path home was chaos. But now you see it. Now you can say, I don't regret who I was, because that woman got me here. Even when you didn't set boundaries, even when you loved poorly, even when you lost yourself in someone who couldn't see you, all of it shaped you, not from judgment, from awareness. Because a conscious woman no longer feels ashamed of her path. She honors it. Do you know why? Because she knows every wound held a seed, and you watered them with tears, with courage, with silence. And now they are blooming. You don't need the world to recognize it, you know it. And that is maturity. Jung spoke of acceptance not as resignation, but as emotional wisdom. To accept your story is not to give up, it's to use it. To see it as fertile ground you grew from, not despite the pain, but through it. Try this. Write the sentence you were most afraid to say about your past. Maybe it's, I betrayed myself. Or, I stayed too long where I wasn't valued. Or simply, I was afraid. Write it. And then right underneath, write, and still I'm here. And that is enough. Because no matter how many times you broke, you rebuilt yourself. More whole than ever, more you than ever, with a clarity that can't be bought, only earned. The woman you are today is the fruit of every version you once were, and that can't be erased. It must be honored. Now, you no longer need to understand everything. You just need to remember you can choose. And that changes everything. You are not at the mercy of fate. You are not trapped in your patterns. You are not doomed to repeat what you lived. You are awake, and an awakened woman is a creator. Carl Jung said, a human being does not discover himself, he creates himself. And you are beginning to do exactly that, not from perfection, from presence. Because now you know, you can't control what happens outside, but you can choose how you relate to it. You can choose to say no. You can choose to begin again. You can choose to protect your energy. You can choose to close doors you once held open out of fear. You can choose to stop explaining who you are and simply be. That is power, not the kind that dominates, the kind that holds, the kind that comes from a truth so deep it no longer needs to shout. And yes, you will still make mistakes. You'll feel afraid. You'll want to go back, but each time it will be harder to betray yourself, because now you know the taste of your own center. And there's no going back from that. Responsibility can be scary, but it also liberates, because now you're no longer waiting to be saved. You don't need someone to blame. You don't hide behind excuses. You choose yourself, even when you're trembling, even when there are no guarantees, even when it hurts, because now you know no one can walk this path for you. Try this. Look at the space you're in right now. Notice the objects, the colors, the light, and ask yourself, does this reflect who I am today or who I used to be? Then write, what decision am I still postponing? What truth am I still avoiding? Where am I dimming myself again? Not to pressure yourself, but to remember, power is not a destination. It's a daily practice. It's choosing yourself in the small things, in how you speak, in how you speak to yourself, in how you ask, in how you give. That's what builds your life, because your story doesn't end with your past. It begins with your present, with this sentence, with this moment when finally you know what comes next is up to me, Now you understand, you were never a victim of chance. You were the protagonist of a perfect causality. Everything you lived served a purpose. Even the parts you still can't forgive, even what you didn't deserve, even the pain that split you open. None of it was in vain. All of it was a portal. Carl Jung said, "The soul has a purpose, even if the mind doesn't yet understand it." And you have understood, not with your head, with your soul. Today, you no longer define yourself by your past. You define yourself by your awareness, by your decision to look, by your courage to change, by your capacity to feel without running. You are not the same, not because you're stronger, but because you are more you, and it shows in your energy, in how you inhabit yourself, in your gaze that no longer seeks approval, in your voice that no longer asks for permission. And now you know, you don't need everything to be okay. You just need to be with yourself. And when you're with yourself, everything finds its place. There is nothing more powerful than a woman at peace with her story. A woman who held herself in her darkest night, who cried for what she lost, who let go of what was never hers, and who chose herself, even when no one else did. You are that woman, and this is not the end. It is the beginning. The life you're about to live is not a repetition, it's a creation. Your creation, with soul, with meaning, with presence. Try this one last time. Take a deep breath. Place your hands over your heart and say to yourself aloud or in silence, "Now, I am me. With all that I am, and all that I no longer am, I am my story, I am my strength, I am my path." And walk. Don't wait for guarantees. Don't look for perfection. Just take a step, and then another, and another still. Your soul already knows the way. And you are no longer lost. You are awake. Welcome to your life, the one you chose, the one you deserve, the one that begins now. Thank you for making it this far. If this inner journey touched your soul, subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us for the next episodes. We're creating a space for brave women like you who are done just surviving and are ready to live with meaning.